So obviously we're meeting as there's war raging in your neighbouring country, Ukraine. Your president has said that Moldova lacks basic military equipment, and obviously there is concern in Moldova about its ability to defend itself, if need be. At the same time, Liz Truss, the British Foreign Secretary, recently said that negotiations or talks of some kind were going on about providing Moldova with NATO military equipment and with lethal weaponry from NATO. Would your government accept lethal weaponry from NATO?
So Moldova is a neutral state. It has been a neutral state since 1994, according to the Moldovan constitution. And actually, if you look at defense spending in the last 30 years, you could see that there was a significant underinvestment into our defense sector. We're spending something like 0.4 of our GDP, and that GDP is already quite small, so our army has been not very well taken care of. At the same time, what we're saying is neutral states also need to be able to defend themselves. Neutral states should not self-isolate themselves. So we do have cooperation with international partners, with NATO, with the EU, with EU member states. In the defense sphere, we want to be more active when it comes to peacekeeping operations. At the same time, all of our cooperation with our partners is transparent. With NATO, we have an individual action plan, individual partnership action plan. It's been updated for some 15 years. We adopted the last version of this plan a few months ago. It's actually public, so in this sense, all our cooperation with NATO is transparent. At this stage, it does not include lethal weapons. At the same time, we in Moldova understand that we need to be improving our capacity to ensure our own security. So there is a conversation inside Moldova as to what next. How do we adapt to a much more threatening geopolitical environment? But we're not talking in any concrete terms at this stage about supplies of lethal weapons.
So at the moment, your position is that you would not take them?
Well, it's not about taking or not. As I said, we are discussing internally what is the best way to continue strengthening Moldovan security. And that's a conversation that is happening as we speak these days and weeks between the military, the political class, the parliamentarians, of course the president, you quoted her, the government. So that's a conversation that is taking place as we speak. And based on how we decide to move forwards, then we'll decide, but then also communicate publicly what are our intentions and plans.
Because the opposition, or elements of the opposition, which of course are quite sympathetic to Moscow, to the Kremlin, they've said that they oppose taking weaponry from NATO and that this would actually somehow compromise Moldova's neutral status.
So neutrality, as I said, does not presuppose self-isolation. Neutrality does not presuppose demilitarization. So neutral states have to have capacity to defend themselves. They need to have armies that work. They need to have equipment that works. So one does not exclude the other. We have neutrality. We need to have the capacity to defend it. That's our position. And now we're looking exactly as to how do we adapt our security and defense policy in light of this new, much more worrying and negative context designed and worsened by the Russian aggression against Ukraine.
Okay, so you're basically saying it's not true that taking the weapons would compromise your neutrality.
No, what I'm saying is that we're discussing our options now as to what do we do next as a political class, as a parliamentary majority.
What do you think?
No, but there is no what I think. I mean, there is what the government of Moldova thinks. And the government of Moldova has not yet arrived to a conclusion that can be communicated publicly as to what are we going to do about our security policies at this stage. But of course, this discussion, won't take ages and ages. So these are decisions that need to be taken quite soon. And when we have more, we will communicate and we will tell you gladly how do we see our next steps in this direction.
Okay. In the last few days, we've seen the former president, Igor Dodon, detained by police. What are we to make of the timing of this? Because you've warned of efforts to destabilize Moldova. Dodon is well known as a pro-Moscow politician, and the prosecutors are investigating him for a number of things, but including treason. So what is going on here, and what are we to make of the timing?
No, it's unrelated to geopolitical events, it's unrelated to the current context, it's only related to the fact that Moldovan society elected President Sandu, elected the parliamentary majority that voted our government to fight corruption, to decrease corruption, and the fight against corruption starts from the top, from combating corruption among the political class, among the oligarchs. And this is something which has been happening over the months. Now you just mentioned this case, but it's not the only. We've had several indictments in recent months. We're seeking extradition of several oligarchs who have escaped, who have stolen a lot of money from Moldova and have escaped to other countries. We've been reforming our justice sector. Just a few weeks ago, we adopted a new law on vetting of judges and prosecutors, and now we're going to go through a certain filter with international experts, respected experts from the justice sector, who will help us clean our system from corrupt judges and prosecutors. In the near future, we'll appoint a former US federal prosecutor as head of our anti-corruption prosecution office. So we have a strong mandate to fight corruption. We will fight corruption, our government will fight corruption, the prosecutors will fight corruption, and
that's corruption. But he's also being investigated for treason, right?
No, he's investigated for corruption.
Not for treason.
Not for treason. But of course, commenting on ongoing cases is not something a foreign minister should do. But that's something related to corruption. You can find it in yourself if you Google on YouTube, but you would see that this person, the former president, is being filmed getting a bag from an oligarch in Moldova, and they talk about this bag containing money and some of this money going to be paid to the party. So each person watching us can just Google and see this former president receiving a bag supposedly with cash inside from an oligarch. So this is what is the source of this investigation.
Moscow has warned you against what it calls settling scores with political opponents. How worried are you by that kind of rhetoric?
We're guided by our political mandate from our society. Our mandate is to fight corruption, and we don't think it's the role of our states to comment on our fight against corruption. We are subject to a political mandate from our population, and we don't find these statements as being relevant, useful, correct.
Do you find them worrying, intimidatory?
We don't find them intimidatory, but obviously we don't think this is the kind of statements that Moscow should be making. At the same time, if you ask us about the general context of what happens in our region, yes, we are worried by the war in Ukraine, we are worried by a lot of things, but not by this statement.
Okay. You mentioned the fight against corruption. Your government was, of course, elected on a ticket which was very much anti-corruption, anti-nepotism. Now, there is a bit of a controversy in Moldova at the moment about the appointment of a future ambassador to Greece, who is a career diplomat, but he's also your godfather. So is that awkward? Is that a problem, that connection?
He's a senior diplomat. He used to be deputy foreign minister for several years. He used to be ambassador to the OSCE and Austria. It's a highly reputable diplomat who has already been more senior than just an ambassador. He was a deputy foreign minister, and he has the right skills and the right to be appointed to a diplomatic post as ambassador in Greece, and he's proved in his career that he can be an ambassador before he can be a deputy foreign minister, and therefore he can also be an ambassador to Greece.
But is it a good look for a government that says we're going to root out nepotism?
Actually, there wasn't. The alternative to that is the principle of meritocracy. Does a diplomat who has spent all of his life doing foreign policy, who has been a deputy foreign minister, has this person the continuous right to be in the diplomatic service just because the political context changed and the minister like me was appointed. There's also the right of someone who is a career diplomat, a respected career diplomat, a former deputy foreign minister, a former ambassador, to continue his career uninterrupted. And I think that's a reasonable right for a person to be able to continue his or her career as a career diplomat.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.